NCAA preseason is in full swing. Ilia Kovtun is seriously considering changing nationalities, and the bonus program will be no more for the 2025 Winter Cup. For those new here, I'm Kensley, the host of Neutral Deductions, a podcast all about men's gymnastics. This is episode 50, where we cover the latest competitions and men's gymternet news.
This is the Neutral Deductions podcast, men's gymnastic news, coverage, and analysis.
So, hey everyone, I am so sorry that I took such a long extended break from the previous podcast. We have had a rather large set of unexpected health problems, which meant the delay of podcast with Heath Thorpe and a few other people. It's actually sort of been a entire medical disaster of a year. We actually hit our out-of-pocket max, not deductible, out-of-pocket max in March of this year, if that tells you anything about how bad this year has been medically for us. But alas, with all things, there are usually silver linings. And for me, the silver lining was while I was recovering, I had a lot of time to do data analysis. And I know for many of you, maybe that doesn't sound like really fun, but that was actually really fun for me to just have some downtime, just stay in bed or lay on the couch and actually do some data analysis. So one of the things that I have been wanting to do for a while is to look into the data to see if the men's bonus program actually worked. And I have so many sheets of data. I cannot even begin to tell you how long it took me. I mean, over 100 hours, I think, of data entry and analysis, but that is finally done thanks to several volunteers who also helped me with that project. There are some really interesting results that I'll probably do a video on next week. So definitely keep a lookout for that if that is something interesting to you. If you're watching on YouTube, click the bell icon and you'll get a notification when it comes out so you can be one of the first to actually see that information. Now, moving on to the NCAA, we are in full swing of the preseason. So we are under the new FIG code of points. Now, the NCAA is using a little bit of a modified version than the FIG, and I'll get into some of the rule breaks in a different video. But this weekend, there were a couple big teams that had their preseason meets, and that was Michigan and OU. So Michigan didn't quite use the new NCAA format. They counted like 3 scores on 4 events and sometimes had 5 people go up and sometimes had 3 people go up. And then they didn't even use still rings or high bar because they had equipment malfunction. So we don't have a great picture about what Michigan is actually going to look like this season, but they are hosting the NCAA championships this year. And then when they hosted in 2014, they actually won at home. So I know that they'll be really motivated to bring a title back home at Michigan on home soil. But they're certainly going to face some stiff competition. So Oklahoma was the other major team that had a intra-squad this weekend. And according to their SID, their sports director, they had a 90% hit rate, which is phenomenal for this point of the season. And what Coach Mark Williams said was that there were good decisions made by their athletes and they looked really professional at this point of the year. The guys looked like they were ready to do the gymnastics that they had planned, and things went pretty quickly with the new rules. And he felt like they adapted really well and that it was a really, really good starting point. So a huge thank you to Michigan and OU for actually putting out information about their preseason meets and also having a little recap, because I know that the holiday season can be really busy. There are lots of parties and people want to be able to keep up with what's going on, but can't necessarily watch live. So coaches, if you would like your preseason meets highlighted, please add them to your schedule and please have your SID write up a report. I think, again, Michigan and OU did a great job of that this weekend, but I know for a fact there were some other schools that had their intra-squad this weekend, and I can find zero information about what happened, who competed, what format they used, and I can't cover the meet if you don't put the information out there. So please, please, please add that to your schedule and put a little recap out for those of us who want to cover your sport better. In terms of recruiting announcements have really slowed down. So the middle of November is when people actually sign their letters saying that they're going to attend a certain school. So if you are interested in looking at who has been recruited for the 2025-2026 season, that is right at the top of the page on neutraldeductions.com, and I encourage you to check that out. Now, there have been a lot of retirements that have come this year, probably most notably Igor Radzivilov of Ukraine. He won an Olympic medal on vault. He has 4 world medals, and he has been on the national team for over 15 years in Ukraine. Interestingly, he was just voted in as the head of the women's program in Ukraine, so I think we'll definitely see more of him in international competition. He just won't be competing anymore. Christian Baumann of Switzerland has also announced his retirement, as well as Ian Gunther, who was on the U.S. national team for a little bit. He's an NCAA champion, certainly well known for his social media presence. He's still going to be involved in the community. I know for a fact that he is going to be doing social media at Beach Blast in Galveston, Texas. So if you are in the Houston area and want to go see him and meet him, I believe he's doing a meet and greet down there as well. And I'm sure he's going to be showing up at several other meets this year. Now, Lucas Dalzer, who was the world champion on parallel bars in 2023 and has been an Olympic medalist as well, originally was going to announce his retirement for Germany at the end of this year after completing in the Bundesliga. But it has been spoken about that maybe he's actually going to be waiting to retire till after the European Championships that are taking place in Germany in early next year. So we'll keep an eye out for that as well. In terms of other competitions that have been happening around the world, one of the big ones was the Japanese All Japan Championships. This was a team and event final championship, so there was no all-around competition. And truly, the level of gymnastics in Japan all year round is so unbelievable. The fact that they can maintain throughout the year so well, it's astounding to me. So the Tokoshuke Gymnastics Club is where 2024 Olympic all-around champion Oko Shinosuke trained, and they just won their 3rd straight team title with a total of 256.595, which was higher than Great Britain's 4th place score at the Olympic Games, which to me just demonstrates the absolute strength of their gymnastics team. So that's like if you had Stanford and Stanford gymnasts only competing at Stanford were able to put up a team total that would place 4th in the world. Like that's what we're comparing. So again, just really, really interesting and good gymnastics coming out of Japan. The highlight for me, honestly, was the high bar final, and they had 5 routines that had difficulty of a 6.5 start value or higher. And the world and Olympic high bar champion Hashimoto Daiki came away with the win with a 15.466 and a 6.9 difficulty score. This past weekend, the KTV Straubing retained their title in the Bundesliga league in Germany. And so some familiar faces on that team, including Andreas Brettschneider, Lucas Dalzer, Felix Dulce, and Illia Kovtun, were competing there. And so each of these teams in the Bundesliga can have a max of 2 people who are from different countries. So Felix from Canada and Ilia Kovtun currently with Ukraine, they were the 2 people coming in competing with the Germans in their own league. Now, speaking of Ilia Kovtun, it has been I would say either heavily rumored, almost borderline confirmed that he is probably going to be switching his nationality from Ukraine to Croatia. I should probably do an entire video about sort of the back end drama of what has happened in Ukraine and why he's considering that switch. It is deeper than what is going on between Russia and Ukraine right now. But there's certainly a lot of thought that has been going into the switch, and it's not just sort of a drastic last minute decision. So one of the indicators, aside from his coach Irina going on national television sort of talking about their decision to move permanently to Croatia, he also took down one of his Instagram posts that said he would be forever competing for Ukraine. So keep an eye out on that. It is believed that he probably will be making that move. Now, in terms of when he could compete for Croatia, if Ukraine doesn't release him, he would need to sit out of competition for a year before changing nationalities. And there are still some questions as to how and if he could get Croatian citizenship. So again, it's just something that we need to keep an eye on long term. Now, Olympic medalist Steven Nedorosik placed 4th in Dancing with the Stars, and he is actually going to be a co-host of the Dancing with the Stars tour that is going to be starting very, very soon, which is almost certainly going to indicate he is not going to be at Winter Cup, as there are tour dates conflicting with that weekend. This isn't an issue. He's actually pre-qualified to the senior national team, which I'll get into more in a moment. So I don't think that we will probably see him in Louisville competing there. Now, speaking of Winter Cup, YouTube actually saw all of this information first, although the sound was really bad, and I am so sorry. So I'm going to go over everything that was in that video for those of you who had a hard time hearing. So for those of you excited about the prospect of no more D-score bonus system, I hate to disappoint you, because that is probably only going to be the reality for the 2025 Winter Cup. D-score bonus is almost certainly going to be added back into the 2025 Classic, 2025 US Gymnastics Championships, and all of 2027, although in 2027 it's going to be reduced. And then in 2028, there would be no bonus system. And this is exactly the model that they followed for this Olympic cycle, so it really shouldn't be a surprise to anyone. But that's sort of what they are looking at this year, is they're going to create a baseline D-score bonus model, but there isn't really going to be enough data to sort of drive what is a good D-score or what is a good score in general. And the FIG and Flip Decisions have done analyses of the routines from this past Olympic cycle and how they would score with this new code of points, the 2025 to 2028 code of points. And so we can get some idea of what good D scores are going to be. It looks like at the very, 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 very top across most of the events, it's going to be like a 6, but that's really, really pushing it for almost all events. But again, the routines that were done weren't actually optimized for this current code of points. So there's still some guesswork there. So I think it's pretty wise for them to say, hey, let's hold off on creating this bonus system until we have a little bit more data to better understand. Then let's get this information to the coaches and the athletes as soon as possible, and then implement it at the 2025 Classic. Now, the people making these decisions are on the MPC, and you hear me talk about this group a lot, and there have been some really key changes that have happened in this group. So Tom Meadows, who was the coach of Asher Hong as a junior, he coached Jonathan Horton, Chris Brooks, Raj Bhavsar, and several other of the top guys in the men's program over the years. So he has replaced Mark Williams, who's the head coach at Oklahoma. Cameron Bach, who was a gymnast at Michigan, he was an Olympic alternate, and he was a multi-year national team member. So he has replaced one of the athlete reps. And then Tyler Yamauchi, who is probably a little bit less well known in terms of the gymnastics community. He competed at Illinois, but he is an Iron Cross world record holder and an 8-time American Ninja Warrior participant. So he's kind of well known in circles outside of the gymnastics world. He has also been added as an athlete rep. And so they are in the process of making some new decisions. Now, in terms of some of the decisions that they've made, one of the decisions is that they are not going to allow the 2025 NCAA championships to be a qualifier to the 2025 US Gymnastics Championships that's going to be taking place in Louisiana in later 2025. Now, the men's program committee meeting minutes state this explicitly, that the NCAA championships, the rules they feel are too different to be a qualifier, and so they will not be moving forward with that decision. However, when I posted this on the website, I actually got a couple of notes from people who are on the men's program committee, and they said, we've been thinking about it. We may actually walk back on that. It could be something along the lines where they allow the top 3 NCAA all-around guys, regardless of how they qualify to go. So previously it would be top 6 all-arounders, but they had to place within the top 10, and they would exclude people who were pre-qualified like Frederick Richard. And I think that they could potentially move to something where they take, if you are the top all-arounder and you're not already pre-qualified, or top 5 all-arounders who aren't including if you are pre-qualified, something like that. So they are going to be meeting this coming Wednesday, I believe, December 11th. So we should find out a little bit more if that actually is going to stick or not. But as of right now, what their documentation said is NCAA championships are not going to be a qualifier, that people will have to go to the U.S. Classic to qualify to U.S. championships. Now, one of the other big decisions that they made that I alluded to earlier is that the 5 Olympic team members, Frederick Richard, Paul Judah, Stephen Edorosik, Asher Hong, and Brody Malone, plus the 2 traveling alternates, Shane Wiskus and Koi Young, are going to automatically retain their spots on the senior national team. This has been consistent with how they have made decisions in the past few years, which is if you win a medal at the World Championships or Olympic Games, you get to keep your spot for 6 months. I like this rule. I think it's a good rule. I think for those athletes who have given so much, to allow them to maybe rest a little bit, I think it's good. I think there is always some question for athletes who may not be continuing on, like maybe Brody Malone isn't going to continue, or Shane Wiskus or Paul Judah. We haven't heard anything from them specifically saying if they're retiring or not retiring, but those are kind of some at the top of the list who think maybe won't be continuing through the full next Olympic cycle. And so should they get funding when other people who are up and coming may need funding? You know, there's always these questions, but for the most part, I'm pretty pleased at this decision, and I think it will give time for people like Koi Young, who has recently had knee surgery, to allow him to heal properly. Stephen Edorosik is getting to do his thing with Dancing with the Stars. I think Asher Hong recently had an injury as well, and so just allowing their bodies to heal a little bit, as they are certainly valued team members for Team USA. Now, those 7 people are going to be on the national team for sure till August of next year. But there's also 4 other guys who are going to be on the national team. And those are the 4 members in the senior development team who earn year-long spots. So 11 of the 20 national team spots are already locked in for Winter Cup. So that means there's only going to be 9 spots able to be earned at Winter Cup. That's not a lot. So it'll be interesting to see if people like Yul Moldauer come back and compete, because his spot, he's been on the national team forever. I would have to go back and look up how many years, but he would be at risk of losing his spot on national team if he doesn't compete. So yeah, it's going to be really, really interesting to see how things pan out. So I hope you enjoyed this recap of all the men's gymnastics news for Neutral Deductions. If you would, please rate and review us on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcast. It helps others find Neutral Deductions and learn more about men's gymnastics. If you would like to bring more live men's gymnastics coverage to life, please consider donating. So I'm going to be heading to Beach Blast down in Galveston. And you know, those flights and hotels and whatnot, it ends up being a couple $100s. So any donation really helps offset that cost. So thank you again to everyone who's donated this year, and to those who are considering donating in the future. We accept donations via PayPal and Stripe, and all of that information is in the show notes and on our website. If you have any questions, comments, insider tips, concerns, you can email me at neutraldeductions@gmail.com. That's all for this week. We'll see you next time.